David was no longer the quiet shepherd boy. It faced Goliath, toppled the giant with a single stone, and been anointed by God as the future king of Israel. Yet despite his victory and God's promise, his path was far from easy. The king, once anointed by God himself, now burned with envy. David, the hero of Israel, the man praised by the people, became the hunted. Imagine being pursued by a king, the very man who once held authority over you, now determined to destroy you. Every hill, every cave, every village became a potential trap. Every step could be your last. David's life became a journey through shadows and uncertainty. Yet in every moment, he clung to God. His faith was tested not in the safety of a palace, but in the wilderness, under the threat of death. Saul sent men to capture David. Some failed. Some came close, but David, guided by divine wisdom, eluded every trap. He moved swiftly, quietly, and always trusted that God's hand would protect him. Every cave became a sanctuary, every desert path a proving ground. It was a crucible, forging the heart and mind of a king. The wilderness was harsh and unforgiving, yet it was also a place of preparation, a secret school of leadership that only God could orchestrate. David had men who followed him loyal, brave, but weary and hungry. They were not soldiers of a mighty army, but fugitives, outcasts, and those seeking refuge. David's leadership was tested daily. Decisions about where to hide, how to find food, whom to trust, and when to move were matters of life and death. Every wrong choice could cost lives, and yet David carried the weight with patience, wisdom, and a steady hand. His empathy, courage, and reliance on God shaped him into a leader capable of ruling an entire nation. The nights in the wilderness were brutal. Cold winds cut through him, the moon offered little comfort, and hunger gnawed at his strength. Sometimes he slept in caves, listening to the howls of wild animals outside. Other times he sat alone on a hill, the stars above a silent witness to his prayers. He prayed with intensity, composing psalms that were cries from his soul. These songs of lament, hope, fear, and praise were not mere poetry. They were lifelines. Reflections of a man learning to depend wholly on God. Each night, as the fire crackled and his men huddled nearby, David would speak words of encouragement, reminding them that God's plan was greater than their fear, that courage and faith were stronger than any sword. David's encounters with Saul revealed the depth of his character. Twice he had the opportunity to strike the king and claim the throne prematurely. Each time he refrained. "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master," he said. In a world where ambition and immediate action were rewarded, David chose patience, obedience, and trust in God's timing. His restraint was not weakness. It was the mark of a man being shaped for leadership by divine wisdom. Even in moments of extreme danger, David showed mercy. Once he entered a cave where Saul rested, vulnerable and unaware. The chance to end his pursuer was within his grasp, but he did not strike. Instead, he cut only a corner of Saul's robe, a silent message that he could have acted, but chose not to. Later he reminded Saul, "I could have killed you, but I did not. The Lord forbid that I should harm the Lord's anointed." This act was more than mercy. It was faith in God. It's justice and recognition that vengeance belonged to the Lord. David's time in exile was marked by betrayal, hunger, and constant threat. Some allies were loyal, others fearful or envious. His men suffered alongside him, enduring cold nights, scarce food, and the fear of ambush. Every day demanded courage, wisdom, and trust in God. Yet David never wavered. He guided his men, protected them, and inspired them to follow with hope, showing that true leadership was not about privilege, but about service, integrity, and faith. David's journey took him beyond Israel, into enemy territory. He negotiated with Philistines, navigated political tensions, and remained steadfast in his faith. Even when surrounded by idol worshippers and foreign powers, he refused to compromise. His courage was not reckless. It was anchored in trust and obedience to God. The Lord's protection followed him, guiding his steps, and turning precarious situations into victories, teaching him lessons that no battle in Israel could provide. These years of exile were formative. David learned the importance of patience, the power of humility, and the necessity of listening to God. Every hardship, every betrayal, every close call was molding him into a king who would lead not only with strength, but with justice, mercy, and discernment. His character was refined in the shadows, tested in ways that no throne room could ever replicate. He also grew in spiritual depth. David spent countless hours in prayer, meditation, and worship. He poured out his heart to God through psalms, seeking guidance, comfort, and strength. Each psalm was a reflection of his journey from fear and despair to hope and praise. They became his armor and his voice, connecting him to God and inspiring generations to come. Reliance on God was total. His victories and escapes were reminders that divine providence, not human cunning, was his true safeguard. David's encounters with Saul were tense and fraught with emotion. The moments when David could have struck Saul, the king, were charged with adrenaline and fear. He stood in the shadows of the cave, the king's sleeping form just steps away, the weight of the opportunity pressing upon him, and yet he acted with restraint and reverence. Every choice he made, every act of mercy, was shaping his heart to rule wisely and justly. David's exile also brought unexpected alliances and unlikely friendships. Some of the Philistines, impressed by his skill and leadership, offered temporary protection. Others, like Jonathan, Saul's son, and David's closest friend, risked everything to warn him, strengthen him, and remind him of God's promise. These relationships were not only practical, they were life-saving, weaving a tapestry of faith, courage, and human loyalty that carried David through the darkest hours. Through all of this, David never lost sight of God's promise. He knew he was chosen to be king, yet he also understood that timing and obedience were crucial. Acting prematurely could ruin everything God intended. His faith was tested daily, not in moments of glory, but in the uncertainty of exile, the fatigue of running, and the vulnerability of hiding. He learned that true faith is not passive. It is active, persistent, and trusting even when outcomes seem impossible. Eventually, the day came when Saul fell in battle. The path to the throne was finally clear. But David's years in the wilderness had not been wasted. They had been his preparation. He had learned leadership through trial, mercy through restraint, patience through suffering, and faith through adversity. The shepherd, the poet, the fugitive, the faithful servant, was ready to lead a nation. His reign would be tempered by mercy, strengthened by hardship, and guided by unwavering devotion to God. David's story shows that even in exile, even when hunted, even in moments of fear and uncertainty, God's plan is unfolding. The faithful will rise, the humble will be exalted, and the patient will inherit the promise. His life demonstrates that trials are not just obstacles, they are shaping fires. Every betrayal, every danger, every challenge was a thread in the tapestry of God's design. For those watching today, David's journey is a reminder that our own trials are not meaningless. Patience, integrity, and faith matter. The God who guided David, who protected him from Saul, shaped him in the wilderness, can guide us through our own wilderness moments. Our fears, our enemies, our struggles, they are not the end. They are preparation. They are refining fires that make us ready for what God has promised. David, the fugitive, the faithful servant, the man after God's own heart, teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. Leadership is not about power, but service. Faith is not only for triumphs, but for trials. And God's timing, like David's, is perfect. The shepherd who became king reminds us that even in darkness, there is light. Even in danger, there is protection. And even in exile, there is purpose. When David finally ascended the throne, he brought with him more than victory. He brought wisdom forged in hardship, mercy honed in danger, and faith strengthened in the wilderness. He knew that God's hand was guiding him, and that his heart aligned with God was invincible. He had learned to trust, to obey, and to lead with both courage and compassion. So remember David the shepherd, the fugitive, the faithful servant, the man after God's own heart. Let his story inspire you to trust God in your own trials, to act with integrity even when unseen, and to walk in patience, faith, and courage. Your challenges are preparation. Your struggles are shaping you, and your faithfulness can move mountains, change lives, and fulfill the purpose God has placed in your life.